All right, welcome back to the program. In case you're just joining us, it's Morning Line with Nancy this Monday. All right, let's quickly get started with our interview. Taiwo Oyedele, the West Africa tax leader at PricewaterhouseCoopers, is joining me right now. From Lagos, I suppose, the Commercial Nerve Center. Mr. Oyedele, good to see you. Long time.
Yes,
how have you been?
You too. I've been doing okay, thank you.
How have you been keeping safe? Because you're also the chairman COVID-19 Intervention Committee for PricewaterhouseCoopers West Africa.
Indeed, I start with taking personal responsibilities. This is not just what you do because you're going to work or you need to believe that this is really a danger to yourself, to your friends, to people you love, and to society. Take that personal responsibility and do the best you can to help others, because one of the things that for me was really very very sad is the fact that almost 1 in 4 households in Nigeria cannot afford soap. So if you can, do what you can to help the neighbor who doesn't have the means to protect themselves, and we all be safe together.
Do you think, since you're the chairman of COVID-19 intervention for the PwC, do you think that this COVID-19 will be over without a vaccine?
No, I don't think so. I'm not an expert, but from what experts are saying, particularly pay attention to what the World Health Organization is saying, and the Center for Disease Control. They are not expecting that this will be over anytime soon. And I think even from common sense, it doesn't look like something that will just disappear overnight. So which means we have to learn to live side by side with the virus, pending when we find a solution, and ensuring that we limit the negative impact of the virus on us, both in terms of keeping ourselves safe and also preserving livelihoods, because we can't be on lockdown until we find a vaccine. People will then die from hunger. So we have to find a way to balance it. And it is a difficult balance, but if we work together, individuals, private sector organizations, government, then this will be a lot easier for us to manage.
I had to start from that background because it's a difficult time indeed for individuals and even companies. And it seems that the government is not making it easy for any one of us. Thursday last week, we saw the tweets, that's at Nigerian Gov on Twitter, on the self-certification forms, and that sent social media into a frenzy. Please, can you just quickly explain this? Because a lot of people don't understand where the government is coming from. What is self-certification? When I have a BVN, when I have a driver's license, when I have an international passport, when I have what again? So many things. What is self-certification?
Yeah, you're right. I think people are angry. Many people are hungry. And therefore, if you compare or you combine people who are hungry with people who are angry, they cannot be rational. So which means government has to do more. So I agree with you. The communication could have been a lot better. So there was no education, there was no context, and I think even the information was, misreported, which, in fairness to both the federal government and the FRS, they had done a little bit of damage control to withdraw it and then to present the information. But what's this all about, actually? So internationally, different countries have different rules for taxing their people. Their people will be their citizens and people who are otherwise residents within their territories. The United States of America, in particular, and one other country in the world, that's Eritrea, are the only 2 countries where their citizens and permanent residents, if like, they can go to the moon or anywhere, they will continue to be liable to taxes in the US. America found out that many Americans were living abroad and they were not reporting their affairs to the US to tax them. So in 2010, America introduced what we call FATCA, the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, that compels financial institutions, wealth management organizations, and all of them, people who hold income and assets for people, to report Americans to the US so they can know whether they have income they are hiding for the purpose of tax. Now, this is not a problem that is peculiar to the US. So At about around 2014, the rest of the world adopted it under the platform of the OECD, and then Nigeria signed up to it. As of today, we have about 109 countries that have signed up. What's it about? It is what we call the Common Reporting Standard. And under that Common Reporting Standard, the countries that are participants to that agreement will exchange information with themselves. In other words, if a Nigerian has a lot of money or assets or a house or whatever it is in the UK, they have it in Dubai, they have it in Bahamas, the authorities over there will tell Nigerian government that this is what we found about your citizens who may be liable to tax. It's for you to now process it and do whatever you like with it. But for you to receive that information, you must also commit to finding out from your own country if there are people here who other countries are interested in their financial affairs. You collect those data and you give to them. So what Nigerian government was supposed to do is to work with banks and the other reporting institutions to identify how best do we deal with this issue. It is not right to ask everybody to go and be doing it. And the analogy I made was trying to find out how many Nigerians have gone abroad to physically attend a university. And you now ask everybody in Nigeria to come and confirm to you whether they have been abroad before. You can sieve out information and be able to find that 99% of Nigerians need not be bothered about that information. So that's the context in a way.
Hello YouTubers, welcome to Moneyline with Nancy TV YouTube channel. This is where we provide you with instructive business directions, processes and guidance to help you assess the right resources to fund your businesses to withstand every form of internal and external shock. You will find here awesome informative videos on business, entrepreneurship and lifestyle just to help you make informed business and financial decisions. Punch the subscribe button and let us drive you through the world of business. Please follow all our social media platforms on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and follow us for latest updates on our website. So just break it down further. Do I get you to say that this directive is not for all Nigerians? Or
Yes,
it's not for all Nigerians that are resident here?
Yeah, so let me tell you who it is for, and also for our viewers. So what Nigeria wants to do. So by the way, Nigeria signed up in 2017. So this is not a new thing. So Nigeria agreed that they were going to participate in 2017. But Nigeria wasn't ready to receive information in terms of, they don't just send information to you. You have to demonstrate that you have prepared your home and you are ready, because there's a lot of confidentiality and all of that, the infrastructure to process it. So Nigeria wasn't ready until 2020. So what Nigeria needs to do is to find out, number one, are there any foreigners in Nigeria? And the answer is yes. So if you're a foreigner, you're living in Nigeria, you're of interest to this issue we are talking about, because your country where you're from want to know what you're doing in Nigeria and the asset and the income you have that you may not have reported to them. That's number one. Number two, are there Nigerians who have dual citizenship? So they are a citizen of Nigeria, but they're also an American, for example. So, and you mentioned the point about BVN before. BVN was introduced in 2014. In 2014, Nigeria had not even thought about this. In fact, the initiative itself was just about starting globally. So nobody knew exactly what would be required. So the BVN was not designed to collect that data. For example, when you're opening your bank account, we can ask you your nationality and you say you're Nigerian. But it's also possible that you're an American, but we never ask you, do you have a second citizenship? We never ask you that. And that is now being needed. So number three category of people that are affected are people who may be in Nigeria, but they have tax residency in another country. It could be that they're a permanent resident. So if you're a Nigerian, a permanent resident of the US, you are of interest. And it also affects people who, even though they may not themselves be the people that are being affected, but they are the beneficial owner of structures that have been created that have international interests, like a trust. If there's a trust in British Virgin Island and you are the beneficiary, then you're of interest under this scenario. So those are the people who are affected. And the organizations that are affected are the ones we call reportable entities or institutions. And the way to summarize is these are organizations that will normally keep income for people or help them manage their wealth. So investment banks, asset management companies, custodians, of course, banks. Banks are the most popular because we keep our monies with them. So it does not even affect only banks, just so our viewers can understand. So the idea is when FATCA was introduced by America in 2010, because the US is such a very powerful country, they actually forced the rest of the world to help them implement their law. And they said, if you refuse to do this for us, as a bank, anything that belongs to you that passes through the US financial system will deduct 30% of it as penalty. And you can imagine there's no bank that wants to be a global bank or even a regional bank that can do banking without involving the American financial system. Of course, you still use the dollars for many of your transactions. So Nigerian banks complied with FATCA without asking everybody to come and do self-certification. So the same structure that they used to do that and it seemed to have worked is the same structure that we should use now to do the common reporting standard such that we don't bother everybody if they're not going to be affected.
So in other words, clarify, this is not for all Nigerians. Foreigners based
That is
in Nigeria, Nigerians that are non-residents in Nigeria. You know, I'm just rehashing, this thing so that our viewers can really understand, because the kind of frenzy that this sent across social media Thursday, Friday wasn't a palatable one at all, because people interpreted this as, what kind of self-certification again when you have all my data, when you've asked me to do KYC and all of that. But if you take a look at the timing, is this a good timing for this? Irrespective of this has been there, the US wants every other country to comply. But is this really a good timing?
No, I think the timing, there's no wrong time to do what is right. What government is just trying to do is that if you need to have declared your affairs, you should declare it. And the target of this is not the poor people. I don't see any poor person who has wealth and resources that cuts across countries. So many poor people don't even have anything beyond their villages, let alone in another country. So to that extent, the timing is fine. But I think if Nigerians also understand it a little bit more, maybe they'll be more supportive, in the sense that the top 1% in Nigeria, in my view, are not paying their fair share of tax. And many of them will be affected by this regulation. So in countries where there's more acceptance of governance and the social contract, you find that the revenue from the top 1% alone is enough to fund the budget. So if we are thinking about Nigeria not having enough revenue, even this time of pandemic, we're struggling to be able to administer palliatives and take care of the vulnerable. It's because of the collapse of the social contract. I know there's the aspect of government, not being trusted, and government needs to do a lot to build trust. But also there's the part of the people just to try and, a little bit of effort to understand policy issues, make contributions, and support them if they make sense, and not just say no to everything just for the sake of saying no.
So does this mean, Mr. Oyedele, does this mean, for example, if I have an account as a Nigerian, if I keep an account in the US, for example, I have investments in the US, this will definitely affect me? Is that what you're saying?
Certainly, this will affect you. It will affect you because the US government will send that information to Nigerian government. They'll say, we found this person within our territory who is your citizen or is tax resident in your country, and here is their information. So what they're simply saying to you is cross-check whether they have told you about this before. And there's nothing that says that the amount you earn in the US will be taxed in Nigeria, but you still have an obligation to disclose it. We can now consider it in view of the provisions of the law, whether there should be tax payable. And if there's no tax payable, just disclose it. In most cases, if tax is payable again, you get what we call tax relief, such that the burden of tax is not twice, because you're likely to have paid tax on it in the US, and now we're asking you to pay tax again in Nigeria. This also covers illicit financial flows. Some of the amount that are being hidden all over the world are not even legitimate income. So which means if you cannot explain it, not only will government collect taxes, you can also have to answer to financial crimes.
Do you think that the way the FIRS as well as the government communicated this at ab initio was right? You know, perhaps the government
No,
needs to do something around its communicating to citizens.
yeah, no, it wasn't right. I think there's no doubt about that. So government could have done a lot better. So that communication wasn't good at all. And for someone like me that has been following this development for a decade now, as soon as I saw the post, I knew it was misleading, and it was going to create a lot of confusion. I tried to then explain on social media, and then Nigerians were angry. So I said, "Why would you be angry? You didn't understand something. Someone is explaining it, and you're angry." But this is something that government should have done. A lot of education is important. You need to connect with your people. So when you speak all these big grammars and you write these terminologies, you lose people, and so they can't understand what you're talking about. I even think that there's no point, asking every Nigerian to go to the banks. The banks can use their own data to do the due diligence to identify those who may be the target, and then write to them directly to come and do the certification. I have a foreign account, and I got a letter, about 3 years ago from my bank, and they said, if this is your money, even though it's a small amount of money, we need you to fill out this form. And if you don't fill it out, or you don't fill it out correctly, we'll close your account and send you your money, because they just don't want to get into trouble. I didn't hear of the UK or the US sending a message to all their citizens to go and self-certify.
With what you just said now, does that mean that all Nigerians should go to the banks instead of
No,
the
they shouldn't.
banks? Yes, instead of the banks doing their own due diligence and knowing the customers or those that have those kind of accounts.
No, Nigerians shouldn't go to the banks unless, of course, if you already fall into the category that I mentioned before. If you know you have dual citizenship, you have investment abroad, you know that you are a permanent resident of another country, or you are here as an expatriate. So if you're an American in Nigeria, you're European, you're affected, you should just go immediately and sort it out. You don't even need to go physically. Many banks are able to deal with this online. So the point is that for Nigerians, they don't need to go to the banks. The banks don't want people to come. I don't think there's any bank that has the resources, particularly at this COVID time, to process thousands of customers showing up at their branches. So banks are also, in their own enlightened self-interest, interested in making the process simple, so it doesn't come at too much admin cost for them to get the data that they want. And like I said before, it's something they've done under FATCA. I'm sure they can do it again.
Mr. Oyedele, why do we always have this uncertainty and lack of clarity around tax issues in Nigeria? It's not just started now, and a lot of Nigerians don't even take it lightly. I know we discussed some months ago about VAT on properties, VAT on rent and all of that. I think there was something around the tax tribunal and all of that. Can you just quickly just explain it? Because it seems that this is not just even a good time to begin to hear of all this left, right, and center. I understand that the government wants money, but how will you tax poor people? How will you tax people that are looking for bread, looking for...
Yeah.
It's, sometimes it's just, I don't even know what to say anymore.
You're right. From a fiscal policy viewpoint, this is not the time to introduce any new taxes. This is not the time to increase the rate of existing taxes, and it's not the time to introduce additional burden of compliance on people, because those three things would compromise the ability of people to recover. And this is the period to focus on recovery from the economic crisis that we're going through. Now, to your point, I don't think there's any tax system where everything is certain. But if you do a scale, Nigeria is like on the top scale of where things are too complicated, and there's very little interest between the people and government in matters to do with taxes. And that is very sad because it's not, the solution to, headache is not to cut off the head. So when a government is not working or you don't like what you are getting from government, the solution is not to then stop paying your taxes because that way the society will crumble. So on this VAT matter, the point is that by law, there's no VAT on land because land is not a good and it's not a service. But then what wasn't clear was how about you then build on the land and you rent it out? It's a rental and income that is liable to VAT. And the FRS has taken the view for a very long time that residential rent is exempt, but commercial rent is not exempt. And the taxpayer went to court to say, well, I do not believe that rent is even a VATable transaction. And in Lagos, the tax appeal tribunal agreed and said that anything that is affixed permanently to the land is an extension of land and therefore not liable to tax. That rent is just a consideration. Really, what you are talking about is the right to use land. That's what you pay rent for. And the tribunal in Lagos said it's not liable to VAT. Unfortunately, the tribunal in Edo State, I think it was Benin, had a similar, exactly the same issues, a different taxpayer, and ruled that even though land was not liable to VAT, that the development on the land is a good, and therefore the rent you pay is liable to VAT. I think this is good for the tax system. Unfortunately, we have conflicting judgment, but testing out the provisions of the law is good. What's going to happen now is we then wait for a higher level, which will be the Federal High Court. And once we get a judgment in the Federal High Court, it will break the tie that we have now in terms of the conflict between the two tribunals sitting in Lagos and Edo State.
Tax issues. I think we just have about 2 minutes with you before you go. What would you say to Nigerians at this point? Because there's also some school of thoughts that will say, as a developing nation, as a poor country, I don't know if we're a poor country or we're a rich country with poor people, or poor country with poor people. I really don't know how to analyze that now. But where I'm going to really is that, must we tax our way out of everything in Nigeria? Should we take the modality or the model that we're seeing in developing countries where they tax everything? You have a country of poor people. Must we tax our way out of everything to get money? Because you're taking from people.
Yes. No, I think it's the lack of understanding of how these things work is the problem we have. And that problem is both with government and with the people in Nigeria, if I have to say the way it is. So on one hand, it is good for, government to want to raise money, and then they must spend that money for the people, infrastructure, human capital development, and then you have a better society. That's the whole concept of the social contract. So in South Africa, if you earn personal income tax, if you earn income that is less than 2 million naira a year, you are completely exempted from personal income tax and 2 million naira is not a small amount of money. That's, maybe more than 140,000 naira, 150,000 naira a month. You don't pay tax at all. Yet South Africa collects more taxes from personal income tax than the entire taxes collected in Nigeria by FRS, by custom, and by all the 36 states, right? Because their top 1% alone, that's less than 50,000 people in South Africa, pay over 6 trillion naira equivalent in personal income tax alone, not VAT, not other taxes. The problem with Nigeria is that we want to tax everyone, including the person who puts a tray on their head. The entire wares they are selling is 2,000 naira. You stop them and say they must pay 200 naira. This is someone struggling to survive. In a country where there's no social safety net, you don't have social welfare scheme. When they are sick, they are completely on their own. So it is wrong. Nigeria needs to redesign its focus about taxes, repeal many of the taxes that are not yielding money for government, but for politicians and corrupt people, focus on a few. And those few should be targeted on people based on their ability to pay. And then more importantly, government should be transparent in terms of how much they've collected and then in how they're utilizing the money. Then and then only can we have a country that we can all be proud of as our own.
Okay, Mr. Oyedele, I think we'll leave it at that. We'll have you some other time. I just need to let you go to do some other things today. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you for watching our video. Please hit the subscribe button below, turn on post notification to follow all our updates.